I've been a Christian now for the best part of 30 years, and I still believe, in fact, I think I believe even more strongly than ever, that God can and does do the most amazing things. Like the disciples in the reading after the enormous catch of fish, God just continues to amaze me. And also he continues to provide what I need and so much more than what I need. Why then? Why is it I still find it hard to live thankfully? Why do I find it so hard to have an attitude of gratitude? Gratitude, a feeling of thankful appreciation for things received. That's a dictionary definition. A feeling of thankful appreciation for things received. Sometimes, I guess, we think of gratitude as a spontaneous eruption of emotion that happens when something really good happens to us. But maybe it's actually much more than a feeling. Maybe it's something we can make ourselves do to bend our lives in the right direction. Maybe it's more of a discipline or a positive habit that we can learn to build into our lives. Maybe disciplines like this can help save us from being human ping pong balls batted around by emotions or circumstances. It's well known, isn't it, that having a thankful attitude is actually good for our mental health too. No wonder then it's something that God, who always wants the best for us, wants us to have, because he knows it's good for us. So why do we find it so difficult, and what can we do about it? Well, firstly, perhaps we're a bit ungrateful because of affluence. Most of us in the UK aren't worrying about how to put food on the table or pay basic bills, although for many that might change this spring. And of course, some already are, and frankly, it's scandalous that food banks have become such a normal part of life for many, and might do for many more. But in general, the truth is most of us, compared to the rest of the world, are rich. We get to travel and drive cars, live in comfortable homes. We have TVs, mobile phones and computers. Most of us get to eat out sometimes, don't we? And we worship in fairly comfortable buildings. Our new Outlook magazine, our new newsletter, includes an update on the work of the Mumusi Foundation in Kenya from Matt Norton, and what it describes is just a world away from most of our experiences day by day. Do have a look at that. Now, you would think that all these blessings would make us the most grateful people on earth, but often all that affluence does is really just make us more and more discontented and ungrateful. Because often the byproduct of having so much is this desire for even more. It's so very hard to be grateful when we can't learn to be happy with what we already have, and the culture in which we live encourages us to think that way. Secondly, perhaps we're ungrateful because of pride. We are proud because we think we've earned all the things that we have. We might say to ourselves things like, I worked hard to get that job. I tried to bring up my kids to be good people. I studied for those qualifications. I earned that award. And in our pride, we don't even think to thank God. We give ourselves a pat on the back and forget that actually it was God who blessed us with those things. Psalm 10 verse 4 says this, in his pride the wicked does not seek God. In all his thoughts there is no room for him. So perhaps in our pride we tend to forget that it's God who gives good gifts. They all come from him. All we have is ultimately his and not ours. Thirdly, maybe we tend to be ungrateful because of the attitudes that are endemic in our society. There's a lot of ungrateful, negative attitudes around, and it's bound to affect us. We can soon turn grumpy and sour ourselves if we're not careful. As I've said before, we do not live in a vacuum. We're all discipled by something or someone. If it's not Jesus, then it's someone or something else that's a big influence on us. There's been research done recently that suggests ingratitude and grumbling are actually as addictive as cocaine. Some have picked up a habit of complaining years ago, and now it's just part of their nature. Some of us do it so regularly that we don't even recognise that it is a problem. As Christians, though, we're encouraged to bring everything into the light, aren't we? To open ourselves to God, to live in a reflective way, and to learn to live the way of Jesus, the way he lived. It's all part of the learning journey of life, isn't it? And God has not finished with any of us yet. We've always more to learn, always more growing to do. We're always becoming. We are always becoming. And one final thing which may affect how thankful we are can be our circumstances. Now I know myself that it is hard to rejoice. It's hard to be thankful when the bills are piling up, or when our health or the health of those we love is just not good. And often the reason behind our ingratitude is those difficult circumstances. Now look, I know this is a tough one. I find it hard too when things seem to be going wrong, when we're under pressure, when we're suffering for any number of reasons. It is so hard to live with a grateful attitude. Believe me, I do know how hard that is. But is there something we can do which can change that? Is there a way of life which can help us see beyond our current circumstances? Well, let me very quickly just suggest to you 4 steps which might help us develop an attitude of gratitude. First is to remember how much gratitude actually pleases God, how he longs to hear it. 2 Chronicles 5 says this: they raised their voices in praise to the Lord and sang, "He is good, his love endures forever." Then the temple of the Lord was filled with a cloud, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the temple of God. So God's presence came to the temple, to those people, in response to the thanksgiving that was coming out of it. God loved to hear the praise from his people, so he drew near. So it appears that thanksgiving and praise are a key to God drawing close. Thankfulness does please him. The second thing that might help, the second step, is to learn to avoid complaining at all costs. Complaining and grumbling are the biggest barriers to gratitude, and it's something we all fall into too easily. We need to learn to catch ourselves when we complain and just stop it right away. The church leader Bob Russell writes this: I really believe the most important step in developing inner peace is to quit complaining and start praising. Here's what Paul wrote in Philippians 2:14. Do everything without complaining and arguing, so you may become blameless and pure children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation in which you shine like stars in the universe. Complaining does us no good, and it does others no good. It's the very antithesis of being thankful. Let's catch ourselves when we have that grumbling attitude. Third step is to make a personal choice to be thankful. Look, as I said, I know it's difficult to be thankful at certain times. It really, really is. But we really, really can make a personal decision that we're going to be grateful people, even when we don't feel like it, even when life is hard. Here's the Apostle Paul again, who wrote these words from prison. Rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. Paul says rejoice twice. He made a personal choice to be grateful despite his circumstances. He decided that even though he was in prison, it did not matter. He was going to praise God and he was going to thank him anyway. And that attitude transformed his whole perspective. In our first reading, 1 Thessalonians 5:18, he says, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Frances Schwartz, in her book Chicken Soup for the Soul, writes about someone called Jerry. Now, Jerry was always in a good mood and always had something positive to say. When asked how he was doing, he would always have the same response. If I was any better, I'd be twins. Jerry was a restaurant manager who everyone loved to work for because he was so positive. The author Francie interviewed Jerry for her book. I don't get it, Jerry, she said. You can't possibly be upbeat all the time. How do you do it? And Jerry replied, each morning I wake up and say to myself, Jerry, you have two choices today. You can either choose to be in a bad mood or choose to be in a good one. And I choose to be in a good mood. Oh, come on. It's not that easy, protested Schwartz. Yes, it is, Jerry responded, because life is all about choices. Well, several years ago, Jerry's restaurant was robbed. The thieves panicked and shot him, and he was rushed to hospital. He spent 18 hours on the operating table and several weeks in intensive care, but he did survive. Later, Francie asked him how he did it, and he said, when I was laying on the floor, I remembered I had two choices. I could choose to live, or I could choose to die. I chose to live. The paramedics were encouraging, but when they wheeled me into the A&E and I saw the looks on the faces of the doctors and nurses, I got really scared. Because in their eyes, I read, he's a dead man. And I knew that I needed to take action. And there was a big burly nurse shouting questions at me. And she asked, are you allergic to anything? Yes, I replied. And the doctors and nurses stopped working as they waited for my reply. Bullets, I answered. I'm allergic to bullets. And over their laughter, I shouted, I want to live. I'm choosing to do that. Operate on me as I'm alive and I'm not dead. And Jerry lived thanks to the skill of the doctors and perhaps in no small part to his attitude and the grace of God too. Francie Schwartz says, I saw Jerry 6 months after the accident and asked him how he was doing, and he replied, if I was any better, I'd be twins. Now, you and I know there is so much in life which is beyond our control. We live in a broken world where there is pain and suffering, but God is at work to do something about it. And so it matters how we choose to live. So look, this week, as I was preparing this talk, I made a choice. I decided that I don't want to go through life with my guard up all the time, bracing for the worst. I do not want to live another moment of my life in fear. I choose to live with my heart open and my trust in God, my Father, believing that He cares about my little life and giving thanks to Him no matter what comes my way. And the final thing that I think helps is to develop the daily discipline of giving thanks. In other words, to make it a part of the rhythm of our lives. Make it a daily habit. To be thankful people, you see, it helps tremendously to start each day giving thanks. We need to discipline ourselves to find something each day that we could be thankful to God for. The Community of Soul Friends form of daily prayer has this each and every morning as something to do and focus on. So I want to challenge you to begin a regular routine of finding something every day to give thanks for. No matter how small that thing is, no matter how small that blessing is, we really can learn to search out the positive in the midst of the negative and to give thanks for what we do actually have. The story is told of two old friends who meet on the street. One of them looked sad, almost on the verge of tears. His friend asked, "What has the world done to you, my friend?" The sad one said, 3 weeks ago, an uncle died and left me £40,000. That's a lot of money. Yeah, but 2 weeks ago, a cousin that I never knew died and left me £85,000. Well, that sounds like you've been really blessed. No, you don't understand, he interrupted. Last week, my great aunt passed away and I inherited almost $250,000. Now, his friend was really confused. Why then do you look so sad? Well, this week, Nothing. I wonder, is that the way we sometimes live before a gracious and loving God who gave himself for us? Let's learn to be thankful people. Let's choose to be thankful people. Let's develop habits which can make us thankful people. God knows, believe me, he really does know. It just might change our lives and in turn the lives of many around us too.